Hello everybody, as many of you probably have figured out by now, I'm also a computer geek. And with this wonderful holiday upon us, and of course I'm talking about Marchintosh, I decided to celebrate my new love of the Macintosh, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I was a lifelong PC guy. Long story how I got into this, I'll probably make a separate film explaining that. But today's film is going to be the subject of today's film, I should say, is going to be restoring a Macintosh of some kind to go along with this holiday. And I've chosen one of these older PowerBook G3s. Now, note on these, as they're known as gray and white, although it looks more black under light like this, PowerBook G3s. There are a few different variations of these particular laptops. This particular one is called a Wall Street. Now, not just any Wall Street, because there are again dimensions of these particular laptops, which I notice a lot of people don't seem to understand and or are confused with. This particular unit is a Wall Street 1, as designated by the fact it has these wider bezels around the monitor, as such. Now, this particular laptop is also called a Wall Street, but as we see, the bezel on it for the monitor is much more compact. This is what we refer to as a Wall Street 2, because again, I'll get you a better shot out of it. Unlike the other unit, as we see, it has a much skinnier bezel, a little bit more refined, better clutch cover, I might add, a few other tweaks done to it, and a better, but again, different hot swappable bays on either side. So it's a little bit different in that regard. Also, the internals are different and much improved. The 233 megahertz of this particular laptop is much more capable than the 233 of the one we were just looking at, the Wall Street 1, as it has cache on the chip. This allows for better memory management and smoother performance, and overall, it's just a better laptop all around. The other one is kind of kneecapped by this and doesn't run very well. Many people, as I understand, can take and have taken the 233 cache chip out of one of these units and swapped them into one of those to make them perform better, or have just started with one of these. So in fact, the Wall Street 1 that I'm working on is less desirable, which is probably one of the reasons why, unfortunately, it didn't get the care it deserved. That said, however, I'm going to work on trying to get it up and running. But just a note again on these laptops, if you see one like this with a skinny bezel, yes, it is a Wall Street, but it's a Wall Street 2. The Wall Street 1 has the wider bezel, this has the more narrow bezel, and they are different internally and have different power outputs, performance ratings, etc. Why would I choose something like this? I mean, obviously the iBook is far more iconic with its translucent colors and its crazy clamshell shape. It really kind of sticks out and is memorable. This kind of looks like a gray suit. I mean, it blends in. It doesn't stick out, although there are some nice industrial features of it. Well, the fact is, this is one of the easiest laptops, unlike the iBook, to work on. The iBook takes a lot of agony in order to keep track of all the screws and everything else to get it apart, and you're going to spend more time disassembling and reassembling it than actually fixing it. This unit is very simple to work on. So what I did is I found this online. It was very cheap. I think I paid less than $50 to get this thing. And it kind of looks it. I mean, the outside doesn't look too bad at first glance, but if you look, there's scratches all over the place. Although I do have worse models. We'll see that later on. And it's pretty much missing every possible accessory. These units had two side expansion slots, and you see this one is missing. I'll try to get you a better shot here. Still trying to get used to my camera setup. See, here's the expansion slot on one side of the laptop. As we see, there's nothing in it. This is where you would actually be able to put either a battery, a zip drive, a super disk, or a floppy drive, or an additional battery on the other side, because there are two of these slots. I'll show you the other one. Pretty cool little feature. These are also hot swappable, which means all you have to do is pull a lever right over here and it'll come right out. But this unit, as you see, the lever has been, well, abused and probably is never going to work again. Whoever had this laptop before me pretty much gave up on it, and I kind of bought it for parts. As we take a look underneath the hood, or rather on the bottom, I should say, before I go underneath the hood, let me show you that. All of the screws have been removed from this unit. All of them. The back ones from the rear of the bezel, from the rear of the corners and the base, from the drive, by the drive bay, I should say. Again, the same story here. Each screw is gone. It has been licked clean, as they say. Not one single screw is left. I think one of the standoffs is even damaged. It's all scratched up. One would think, my God, what a piece of junk. But again, the concept was to buy this for parts. But like any part source computer, train, anything I work on, I want to make sure that it actually doesn't work before I go any further. Because who needs to destroy something that doesn't need to be destroyed or isn't actually dead? So I went ahead and I opened this thing up. Hooked in a power supply, and this is probably one of the reasons why many of these things get listed, as I might mention, like this one, as untested. I'm not saying they're all going to be like this, so please use your judgment when buying one and use it very carefully, because a lot of times the words untested in quotation marks means broken. In this case, my gut told me something, that the reason why this thing was listed Don't ask me how I had this strange gut feeling, was the fact that no one had a power adapter. The reason for that is, if we take a look at the power adapter, it doesn't look like a power adapter. It's this weird yo-yo shape, which is literally what Apple calls it, which you can curl the wire around. This plugs into a power connection on the back. Very strong and sturdy, I have to admit. And it has this sort of standard prong cable. This is not the original one. This was modified by the owner, because I think this cable broke on him, so he gave me this instead. This is from a different laptop of a similar vintage. Anyway, most people take a look at this and say, that's not a power adapter. In fact, this looks like a mouse, because if you remember, Apple during this period in time came out with their hockey puck mouse, about a year or so around this time when the original translucent G3 showed up. And most people look at this and say, oh, I know what that is. That's a mouse. I don't need that stupid mouse. It was a pain to work with, and bam, it goes into the garbage, and or it gets given away, or something else happens to it. The end result is that the laptop can't be tested, because this is, in fact, the power adapter, even though it looks like a mouse, even though it looks like something out of this world. Now, don't get me wrong, power adapters can get lost for other reasons, too. It's very common. That's one of the reasons why when I store any of my laptops, I always take the power supply as well as the laptop and put it in the same case, making sure the power supply is in its own separate box, I should say compartment, pardon me, in the laptop itself, zipped up safe, and the laptop is in its own separate padded compartment, so they're both safe from each other, but at the same time are together. So if I want to mess with it, I can just basically I can just open the bag and find the power adapter, get it all set and ready to go. The catch with that, the other thing I also do, I should say, when I should work with it, just to be very clear, is I usually take the actual battery and put that in a separate compartment so I don't leave it plugged in. Anyway, the power adapter on this one goes into this really strange port back here. It looks almost like a headset jack, although a little bit wide for it back here. I might also add that the original adapters for these looked a little bit more simple, looked a little bit less funky, but this one will work with it. It's a 45 watt. So anyway, I connected up my power adapter, and I'll turn my power strip on to show you what it does, and just to show you a few quirks here. Now, I don't know how well that came out on video, but as you'll note, the green light came on here indicating power by itself without me touching the power switch, and the fan spooled up. A lot of you might freak out seeing that, and I don't blame you. That's not normal behavior. However, this is not a normal laptop. What this is a very ingenious little feature that Apple put into its laptops, that when the laptop has been off for a while and the CMOS/PRAM battery is dead, the unit assumes it's got dust in there, so what it does is before you even start it, it turns the fans on full blast to blow any dust out of the vents. I remember seeing this way back in 1997 and watching CNET Central. I'm starting to date myself a bit here. When these things were new, and it's a very nice little feature. It keeps the dust out, and that's what it's doing. So don't freak out if it does this to you. There's nothing wrong with it. That's just a feature the unit has built into it. So, anyway, I went ahead and I gave the power button a whirl. Not thinking much, and then hearing the chime. I thought, oh wow, this thing actually works. Now, typical with these power Macintoshes, it takes a while for the thing to start. Don't freak out. There's always going to be a chime and a sort of low period or latency period while the system decides if it's in good enough shape to kick over. See, now the hard drive just spooled up and it's working. Now, while that's all well and good, if we take a look at my monitor, unfortunately, well, that's not all well and good. As we see, there is no picture on the screen. By now, the screen should have lit up and started doing things, and it doesn't. So I tried everything. I tried reseating the cables that go underneath here. I'll show you how to get into that in a little bit, and doing everything, whatnot, but I could not get the screen to come up, and I was pretty much ready to think, okay, this is broken. I just can't do anything with it. Then something interesting happened. I decided for giggles, once again, to give this volume button a little touch. I think it's booted up now. Well, it's not booted up yet, but anyway, I actually heard a tone from the laptop at one point. When I tried to adjust something, I thought, oh wow, is this thing actually booted? I might also add that the monitor itself is very loose, which indicates this clutch in here is pretty much shot that holds this monitor in place. And it's actually kind of hanging off, because again, all the screws are missing on it. So I figured, you know what? Anyway, I'm hearing tones anyway from it over and over again, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. How can this thing be giving me tones if it's not actually booted up? So then I noticed something on the back of the unit here. Let me not break my laptop here to show you, but there is this little trap door, and what we have here is a VGA output right there. So I figured, hey, why don't I try plugging my VGA monitor, which is right over here on my main system, to my desk on the left over here, and see what this thing does. It can't hurt. It's not going to cost anything. So that's pretty much what I did. So what I did is I took my VGA equipped monitor, which I use for my two main monitors. It also has an HDMI port. For some reason, HP thought it was a good idea to give it a VGA port as well. And I went ahead and just hooked it up right to the back of this laptop on the VGA port. And lo and behold, look what I have here. macOS 8.1. still running despite the noisy hard drive. So it's pretty stunning. So again, what I have here is pretty stunning to me, and that is the laptop that I've been given up on. But in fact, it's in a functioning, although not in obviously perfect shape, PowerBook G3 Wall Street 1st Gen. Even though it, of course, is going to need help. The monitor's, of course, dead and other such problems. So I couldn't in good conscience trash this laptop because it does work. Something that if it were broken, I could do it, but now I can't. So I'm going to have to do work on this thing to get it up and running correctly, and that's where my part systems come into play. Now, if Lauren is wondering why the seller wasn't able to get this laptop open despite pulling all the screws out of it, well, I'll show you. There's a little trick here. You have to take the keyboard off, and that's actually very simple. Under each of these expansion bays, there are 2 tabs. Pull them towards you. As I said, pull them toward you, and the keyboard will pop up, like so. And you can gently remove it. And underneath the hood, we see exactly why the unit was able to boot. The original hard drive is still in place, as well as the CPU. All of this is sitting in here. And yes, I did ground myself in case anyone's wondering. And I usually have anti-static guard stuff on as well. All that said, however, I can't, in good conscience, as I said before, tear this thing apart. Because it does actually function. So what am I going to do? Well, I did the right thing, as many YouTubers seem to be saying these days, and, well, bought myself another one. And so, as I was saying, I did the right thing and bought another laptop. Well, actually, I lied. I bought 2 other laptops, not for the sake of trying to replace it, that'd be crazy, but for the sake of parts. As much as I do love these PowerBooks and have gotten addicted to running classic Mac games because I love the classic gaming on it, I'll make a separate video on that again. This particular laptop is the first of these 2 units, and while I think the vast majority, just to make this very clear, of eBay sellers are very decent, very good people, and do a very good job of trying to make the customers as happy as they can and provide excellent customer service, there are a few that tend to get a little economical, shall we say, with the truth. I live in upstate New York, and this area has had a bunch of storms in recent times, and in not so recent times, this unit here appears to have been sitting around for quite some time. It was listed, that said, as having, quote-unquote, water damage. I'm sorry, this doesn't have water damage. This has been outright submerged in mud. As we see, the keyboard is covered with it. I won't even attempt to power this on, and if I can show you, as you can see by the expansion card I took out of one of the hot swappable bays, this thing has literally started to rust out. It literally probably spent who knows how long sitting in the bottom of someone's basement after this point, never being dried out. So I'm not even going to attempt to power this thing on. Admittedly, I knew that going into this, and then I knew the listing of this item was for parts not for parts untested, and that usually is taking a bit of a chance, much like the other one. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but again, I was just looking for the screws. What I'm hoping is, however, that the monitor on this one is actually okay, because it looks in excellent condition. And also, I also note this is very, 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 very stiff and sturdy. So I'm thinking that the parts on this would be usable to fix that one. So hopefully I didn't completely strike out with this one. And here's the second part spin laptop, which is most definitely a part spin brought to you by your local postal service. As someone apparently who works for the post office at some point during this thing's transportation decided to use this for football or volleyball practice or something, perhaps rugby. I'm not so knowledgeable with sports, but as you can see, it took a good knock here. And if we take a look at this unit, oh boy, did it ever take a knock. The rear corner of this corner, as we start with where that dent is, has been completely knocked out. This can be possibly fixed, but I don't know. The standoff has been trashed. This whole section here is destroyed. We look at the back here, and the side of the monitor has been completely trashed. This is one of the reasons why I bought this, because the monitor was in decent shape on it. I'm not sure if this is salvageable. It might be. As we can see, the whole side here is missing its plastic. It's been completely torn apart. I don't know what the heck happened here, but my God. The battery also looks like it took a wallop. As you see, this is all scratched. There was some minor scratches on this one when I looked at the eBay listing for it, but nothing like what I am seeing right now. Luckily, the seller was, again, a very decent person, said, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I got all of my money back. So I don't know if there's anything salvageable on this. Probably not. I'm not sure I want to try anything. I've already attempted to power this thing on, and the fan spool up, and that's it, which is not a good sign, although it's not completely dead, so it might be salvageable. It does have one of the critical components I'm missing from the other laptop, and that is this hot swappable CD-ROM drive. Because if I'm going to do any serious work on that one, including what I plan to do is to put a SSD in place of the old hard drive or change the hard drive in general, one of those two options will happen, probably the SSD one. I need to have one of these drives functioning. I could also use an external one, but this is probably the best option for that. So, that's essentially where I am right now with this project. So before I go any further on the one unit that I know works, I want to take a look at this one and see if I can get this thing going. So that's where we're going to start tonight. So let's open her up. Open her up. Yeah, there we go. Gonna pop out my hot swappable drive. Again, there's a little lever that's buried right in here. Again, when I notice a lot of people tend to like to force things open, and sometimes the bigger hammer method does work, but I don't recommend using it. We grab this end right here very carefully and pull on it. The drive pulls right out, and I can pop this out. This is definitely a worthy... Well, just a piece of plastic just came out with it. This is definitely a worthy find by itself. These are very hard to come by, so if I can't get this thing working, and hopefully this thing survived, although I just saw some plastic go flying on it. Ouch. So this might be actually a salvation to this unit. But if I'm listening inside, there's something loose in it, so I'm not sure. I gotta remind myself to pop this little drive open here and see if I can see what's inside it. In fact, let me see if I can do that. I have a pin someplace around here to eject these things with. I learned to always hang on to, when you get a cell phone, to hang on to these little eject pins. Here's mine. I always keep this within arm's reach. Here's my little eject pin for an SD card. It works the same way. Push it in, pull this out. Okay, let's see where the horror is. Ah! Okay, yeah, I don't think this is salvageable. Look at that. Yes, again, I should mention this unit is circa 1998. Oh, there's more junk in here. Oh, like a gift box. Ah, box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Yeah. Think of that not so obscure reference to a 90s film. And here's another piece of metal that fell out of this as well, so I don't think this is salvageable either. Yeah. I'm tempted to try this out, but I'm not sure I want to. But yeah, I probably will, just to see if it's actually worth doing anything with. But yeah, these two parts came out of it. I'm not sure what they're supposed to be doing in there. If they're supposed to be in there, maybe they got shoved in there, but I doubt it. I have a feeling something broke inside this drive and it isn't going to work ever again. Although I did hear this thing spool up when I tried to power it on the first time. Now again, what this thing did when I powered it on was, in fact, let me demonstrate it for you. So again, what this thing does when I power it on isn't anything confidence boosting, to put it mildly. Ugh. In fact, before I don't even have to power it on, the power comes on and it doesn't go off. It just spools the fans up at full blast. I'm not going to leave it on like this because I don't want to take a chance with it. I'm going to actually turn my switch off on my power strip here, as I can't imagine running those fans at full blast is good for it over long term, especially considering how old they are. Let me actually move this to the side. Actually, oh yes, I was going to show you how that optical drive works, if it works. Even if it doesn't boot, I should be able to at least test to see if this drive will respond to commands. But I have a feeling with this being shot here that it's in bad shape. Let's see if this thing does anything. Nope. Completely dead. So it's probably destroyed as a result of all that happened. It's a shame, too, because this was a very good system. At one point, it was taken very good care of. It was much better shape than the other unit that I'm actually trying to restore. But because of all the cracks, as you can see on the top here, this monitor, as you can see, is just totally destroyed. There are cracks all over the place. One on the bottom, one on the top. The whole side panel here, as I've shown before, is missing. This whole side panel for the screen, I know it's kind of hard to see here, is missing straight across. This thing has just been totally destroyed. So unfortunately, what started off as being a very promising system is probably going to be a parts system. But knowing me, of course, I don't want to assume it's that. I don't want to doom it unless I can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is doomed. I'm going to go ahead now and actually take these hot swappable bays out and get into the keyboard. So again, how you do this is you reach on the bottom here. Oh, this bay is actually destroyed. Look at this here. The bay is actually partly destroyed on this side. But yeah, you reach out here, you pull these bays inward towards you. It pops both drives out. You need to get both the battery and the drive out. This battery is junk, and I don't trust it because it took a wallop. I'm going to probably ditch this. I throw these out usually because there's no point in it. I never use these portably. They're only going to be used in the house. Here's the hot swappable optical drive. I'll have to check that out later to see if it'll work, but I don't think it will. Now again, grabbing both switches on the bottom here. Put both hands inside, pull the switches towards you. And the keyboard will sort of pop up in this case. This thing has been jammed so badly, it's bent. I might be able to save the keyboard at least. Okay, here we are under the hood. We have a screw that holds the CPU shield in place, as well as a secondary screw. I'm going to ground myself now before I proceed any further. We're going to remove them and we'll get access to the internals of the thing. It looks like that has been tampered with. The screw is kind of stripped here, but I have extra parts, so I can always try to get another one for it. Let me go get my little parts box here. I'm going to use this old cell phone box to store my parts in. Just keep them aside. I always recommend, this is something I was taught when I was a kid, when my father would have me disassemble my toys to try to fix them, which is actually an interesting story. My father had a policy. If a toy broke when I was a kid, we would both try to fix it. I would try to fix it myself, but if we both failed to get it fixed, the rule was, as long as I made an honest effort to try to repair it and it didn't work and he did too, I would get another one. There were no questions asked if it broke. And that motivated me into learning how to take things apart, and is why I've become as savvy as I am with technology, because I would never have gotten into this field had I not started to learn how to take things apart and repair them. So here's the two screws I pulled out. Again, that one right over here and the one right over here. That's all you need. This is, again, is the heat shield, so be careful with this. It's also an I/O sort of interference shield thing, kind of all integrated into one. Remember, this is an older laptop from the late 90s, as fast as these were considered. All you do is you grab this little lever, this little handle thing here, and pull up on it, and it comes right out. It was suspiciously loose. Now, what I like here is I have another one of these units, the other Wall Street, that actually has discoloration here, so I might be able to make use of this CPU. If the rest of it, this thing won't work. But yeah, it looks like the CPU itself is in good shape, but this is also locked down pretty well. The hard drive is also in here, but it won't start. I have tried that shift command or whatever it is option a couple times. All that does is turn the power on and off. What I'm looking for now is physical damage to see what is causing this not to boot. Try reseating the RAM. One of the tricks you can do sometimes is to reseat these old cards, and they'll just suddenly come back to life. I'm going to now take this out. This has got a Torx bit here. I didn't even realize that, but I have a Torx screwdriver kit, so that's no problem. Just have to dig it out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my hard drive out. Oh, I thought there for a second it was removed already, but no, the screw has not been taken out. So all to do there is just take your screwdriver, put it in there, Phillips head. Pardon the rough camera work here. Again, the screw just lifts right out. It's actually held captive, if I remember correctly. All I'm going to do now is gently pull up on this side. Let me move my screws over here so they don't get knocked off the table, as that always seems to happen to me. I'll take these other two parts that came out of the drive and throw them in there as well. I'm just going to lift up on this little lip, and up it comes. And out comes the hard drive. Ooh, so this was messed with too. Someone was clearly in this before I got into it, it looks like. I can tell it was, because if we take a look here, there are two screws missing that hold this thing down, or should hold this thing down. So this tells me that someone has been here before me, and we have an Apple Defter, or IBM Defter here, or Travel Star as they're known. This is 6 gigabytes. That's actually a little bit bigger. The other one in the other unit was only a 2 gigabyte model. Again, remember, this is from the 90s. This was the equivalent of 6 terabytes these days. That was a big deal to have that much capacity. But again, you have to remember, these things, at 6 gigabytes, these things were a big deal back in the day. That was like 6 terabytes these days. But now, of course, it's like the equivalent of saying, well, I've got a 1973 AMC Pacer sitting in my garage. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Pacer has got its own sort of fan following, but it's kind of had its own era, and it kind of died out with that era, much like this level of hard drive capacity and this old school interface here. So I'll put that to the side. So here's the processor card. I think what I'm going to do is yank this out, because I think I have a job for this thing. I'm going to assume at this point that this motherboard has just had it. It looks like someone really did a number on it before I got it, and then on top of this, it's now suffered who knows how much damage in transit to me. There's a Torx bit, so I need to get one of these Torx screwdrivers out. Let's see, I think is it this one right here? These always tend to look smaller, or actually bigger than they actually are. Well, it works. So now this whole processor card should be able to lift out. So I missed something. I guess I can pull this keyboard. I don't think this thing is going back together. I guess I probably should. To get the keyboard out, you have to be very careful and lift up on it. Let me actually pull my spudger out. I don't want to break these things. I don't like pulling on the wires, especially old wires like these, because they tend to get very brittle. I'm told a million times out of 10 that they are very durable and they won't break. I've seen a million times these things kind of break, and the parts are not exactly available on your corner drugstore, etc., or convenience store. So you definitely don't want to have that happen. So I think I may have to pull up on it. I don't see how else I'm going to get this out. So gently with my little plastic sponger, I'm just going to walk it up, as they say, one point at a time. There it is. I tend to like to leave these parts in with the computer so I know where the part came from. That's the easiest way of doing it. Fine. So let's see now what else is holding this in place. Rule number 1, never pull things out. Always check to see if something's holding it. And so after consulting that all-important repository of knowledge, the internet, I've figured out how to do this. Apparently this whole card comes up as such. This whole section here just pulls right up. When in doubt, pull a little harder. It did come up. I don't like doing that, but it did work. And this is the processor card. It's out now. 64 megs of RAM on one side, and another, I don't know how much this is. I think it's another 64 on this side. There's a double slot here. One is for the memory, one is for the CPU. That's the CPU in there. I don't know the exact megahertz rating on this because I was never able to get it started, and the previous owner didn't know. Just get a good shot of this here, so in case I need to look it up. The thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try reseating this. I know this sounds ridiculous, but sometimes doing things like that can fix one of these units and get it running. Remember, these old things have been around a while, and you never know. Sometimes just by doing something as simple as that, you can fix it. I also want to get comfortable messing with this because I have one at least that I'm going to have to do major work to. So all this should do now is once I'm sure I'm lined up. Well, I can't be because that little screw hole has to be above it. It has to be below it. It would have to go that way because it can't. There's only one way this goes in because these ports have to line up here. So it has to go in like that. It has to go down like that and in there. Let's line up these two little processor slots. Ah, there it is. And there's two little sort of holes here. Little jigsaw holes in there that have to go in. Two little tab holes. Now it should just press into place. Yep, there it goes. And that's how you get that out. So I'm actually going to see if that did anything. I know it sounds stupid and ridiculous, but this sometimes can be the difference between getting a system working or not. Just something simple like that. Let me try pulling the RAM out too for a second. And just reseating that, see if that does anything. I'll just do the one dim for the time being. Since I'm here. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to grab that screw I took out of here and just reassemble everything. The screw is actually still in place here, so I'm just going to go back in and turn it back down. I'm not going to bother putting the hard drive back in. I just want to test it to see if it does anything. Let me now reinstall this panel. You always want to test this with the panel on it because this panel, in addition to providing RF frequency shielding from the computer itself, also is the heat shield, is also the heat sink for this because it's a dual purpose setup. This is Apple's thing. They wanted to keep it as quiet as possible, although this does have a booster fan. This is just after Steve Jobs came back. And eventually they would get rid of these things in favor of having... It wasn't like this. In favor of having fanless designs like the iBook, which is completely fanless. That succeeded the Power Mac, that deceived the Power Macintosh, PowerBook G3s, I should say. Which is what this one is. Okay, so now with that in, I'm going to give this one last try. See if it does anything. I don't think it's going to. I've got my power connection right here. Push it in to the back. Turn my power strip on so I can turn it. See if there's any carnage. That's what it always does. And no change. Oh, wait a minute. That's actually a good sign. Because it just turned itself off again. I wonder. I wonder, did I just fix this thing? So, let us pull this forward and see what happens when I hit the power button. Because that's what it's supposed to do on ignition. You gotta be kidding me! Ha! That's all it took. I'm speechless. And look, the screen even works. Now, I'm gonna get a sad Mac on the screen because, again, I pulled that hard drive out. But my God, this thing actually functions. That is hilarious. We got a screen now. I don't have anything on the screen yet. Let's see if it does something. It should give me the SAD Mac because it obviously doesn't have a hard drive in it in a second. The screen is flickering. Okay. Turn the brightness down a bit. I should get a SAD Mac on the screen in a little bit here or something. It's alive! It's alive! Sort of. I don't have any picture on the image. I don't have any picture on the screen. The screen is lit up, which is a positive because the other screen on the other unit won't even light. This thing is working. The only problem is this bezel is completely trashed, so there's no way that's salvageable, but... Nothing's happening yet. I'm tempted to plug this into my monitor to see what's going on. Maybe the monitor connection came loose on this. Considering the wallop it took, I wouldn't be surprised. It's flickering and doing different things on the screen, but it's not doing anything else. Let me try putting that hard drive back in place and see what that does for me. So let me see if do I want to power it off? Well, actually, it shouldn't be a problem because I don't have anything in here anymore. But I actually got this thing to post, which is insane. Again, Macintosh's post by making that chime this thing just did. So that is definitely a push forward. Let me turn this thing off and see if that other screw will go in there. If I put the drive in, it'll actually start. Let me actually before I do that, let me try one more thing. I've got my cable here from my monitor. Oh, it turned itself off. Let me try one more time to see if it will post. See if it does that again. Yep, there it is. Sometimes it's like a car that hasn't started in years. You know, you mess around with it and it just comes to life after starting and shutting it off a couple times. Yeah, again, the screen is lit, but there's no data coming to it, but it's blinking. Let me go actually and throw this on my computer quickly here and see what it does. Hook it up to my screen and see what this thing does. Okay, so I did hook it up to my VGA equipped monitor and it didn't actually do anything, unfortunately. I didn't get any kind of output, so it looks like this didn't post it. It's sort of semi-posted. But before I do anything else, I'm going to obviously throw the hard drive back in there. But before I do anything else, let's see if this optical drive actually works. Because that would be a big plus, because I need one for that other system. Even if I can't get this thing working, this would be a plus in itself if I can get it working. As I understand, this should have given me a SAD Mac on the screen and given me some display output, but I'm not getting anything. So I put it in, and I don't hear anything. It's completely dead. I think it has to post in order for this to function. So yeah, unfortunately, it looks like this is somewhat alive, but not completely alive. But that is definitely a positive from this unit. So now that I got this thing going, oh, it looks like it just powered itself off. What I'm going to do next, I think, is actually go back in here, put the hard drive in place, and see if maybe that'll make it post. It shouldn't make a difference. I should still get a SAD Mac when I have that plugged in. But whatever the case, that is a good sign. Let's go in now and pop this drive out and do that again. So anyway, putting this back in, just to show you how this goes in, and again, to demonstrate again, this has been fooled with because these two screws should be here to hold this piece against the hard drive, and they're not. How this goes in is really simple. Well, I should really clean the dust, but let me not worry about that just yet. Just slide this whole assembly into the side. This latches in. It's got its own sort of lock right on the side here, and then gently apply pressure to it. And then there's an edge connector, or like a board connector right here that you see on the bottom of this drive that connects into a plug right on the motherboard itself. So you line the two of them up and you gently apply pressure. Again, slow and steady wins the race. Less is more. Less pressure is more. Don't be tempted to grab a hammer and swack things, as I've seen some people do. Even if you start getting frustrated with it. That's one thing I was always taught as a kid, never to do that, because it will probably damage things, and you won't have anything to show except a broken hard drive. In this case, and in my case, probably a broken ego as well. One thing I did notice after I took this thing apart, this heat shield was kind of warm, which is unusual and not a good sign. I never known these to get that hot, so I'll try it one more time with the hard drive just to see if it will post. Unfortunately, if it still doesn't work at that point, I'm going to have to assume that this thing is not going to be salvageable. There's nothing else I can do to try to make it post beyond that. And again, these units aren't as much in demand because they have the uncached 233 chip on them. The Wall Street 2 had the better ones. A lot of people swap them out with that. I don't have one currently that works. I have one of those, the Wall Street I showed you before, but that actually has a problem of its own. I'll do a separate video on it. I might actually take parts from this one to try to get that one to start. This has the less desirable processor in it, but I'm thinking that that's what's wrong with that one. So I got it back together. I'm going to take my plug and plug her into the rear now and try one more time to see what it will do now with the hard drive in it. It shouldn't have made a difference, but you never know. These old units can be very fickle. They'll do things when they're not supposed to, and they'll do things when they should. Just going to see if the hard drive spools up, which will tell me something different. So let's do that again. Power is connected. No light. Oh, I didn't turn the strip on. Always helps folks to turn your strip on. There it goes again. Power is coming up. Power's off again. I almost wonder if maybe I should try the power off reset thing and see if that would cause it to kick over. I'll try that procedure again. Okay, so it's not doing anything. That's typical of a startup sequence on these. It takes a second for the system to figure out what's going on and then spool up the hard drive. No screen yet, no hard drive. Oh! Hard drive spooled up. That's a very good sign. It's like they designed these things to be tedious. Okay, it's restarting again. I don't know what that means. Okay, I hear the hard drive. I hear activity. That is a very good sign. No picture, though. The light is flickering on the monitor, so something is definitely up there. I don't know what. But it appears it's alive. It's starting. The hard drive is clicking. But I'm just not getting an image on the screen. Messing around with the image quality here. Let's go to top. I almost wonder if the display itself is not connected anymore, and that's what caused it to go south. What I'll try now is I'll try hooking in my VGA connection and see if that works. So anyway, I'll come back in a bit after I hooked it up to see what it does. Okay, so this is like really strange. I'm getting plenty of sound effects. Let's see here. I'll turn the volume up and you can hear it's got sound. It's definitely in Mac OS, but I've plugged this into my VGA port on my monitor. It doesn't work. I've tried everything on this display itself, turning the brightness up and down. It doesn't work. I don't know what's going on here. It's very strange. So I'm thinking there's an issue with the display card. I got to read up and see if there's an issue with how they work on these things. Now the problem is I got to figure out how to turn this thing off, and I can't shut it down that way. So I got to maybe just hold the power button and just let it shut down that way. I guess it's better than pulling the plug, but I have no way of shutting this down correctly because unfortunately I can't see what's going on the screen right now. As you can see, it clearly is working. Okay, so here's where I am with this unit now. Again, I somehow resurrected this from the dead by just reseating some things, which is typical of an old computer, finding more parts of plastic, pieces of plastic, I should say, that have broken off. I basically now have gotten this clutch cover off, which how I did that is actually, it was right in front of me. It was as simple as putting a little bit more force on it. I hate doing that. But yeah, this basically pops right off. All you do is, oh, yeah. I just noticed something. These clips seem to have broken. Oh, that explains why it was so easy to get off. But anyway, how I did it is I removed this hard drive, and then these two clips pop right off. And what's left of them, at least. This has been apart before, so it looks like someone had this problem with the display before I got the unit. Yeah, not a pleasant sight to see that these clips are now gone. There are two of them. You can see where this one has been literally snapped right off. That explains why it came off so easily. But anyway, pulled up on it, got the clips off, and these are the two offending articles, at least to this particular display. Again, I tried this with my VGA monitor and still couldn't get it to work. So what I'm going to do now is just what I did before and unseat these cards and try seeing them back in again and see if that does anything to fix anything. Let's see here. I got to be very careful how I handle this. This is there's. I'm just going to take that one off. This just pulls right up. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no. Is it broken? Oh, no, it isn't. I thought for a second this was broken, but it's not. That's actually its design. So this just goes right back in. Going to reseat both of these, and then I'm going to put it all back together again and try one more time to see if this will start. Actually, now, I also noticed something else here in this little display cable socket here. This wire is sitting inside it. I don't know why that's there. It almost looks like it was like that from the factory. So I got my plastic sponger. Again, never use metal with wires, folks. It really is not a smart move because you'll break the wire. At best or worst, you'll electrocute yourself. It's just not a smart move. I'm using a plastic sponger. These aren't expensive. They're a couple of cents a piece, or at least they were when I bought this one. Although with inflation, you don't know. Anyway, rant over. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and reseat this one, and I'm going to do the same with the other side, and then put it all back together and try one more time to see if she'll kick over. But if it still won't work, I'm going to have to assume it's dead. The display card internally appears to be shot, and that's part of the motherboard on this from what I understand. So I don't think I'm getting that running again if that is the case. So let's now just do one more time here. This, I think, is the data cable here. Let me actually just watch it. Let me actually just take one look at my source here and make sure I have this disconnected correctly before I pull on the wire. So apparently it is as simple as that. You pull straight up and the cable comes out. I don't think so. It just doesn't seem like it. I don't like forcing things because that's how you break things, especially on something this brittle. So I'm going to not grab it by the wire and maybe try to get in there with my sponger and push it up. And I may have to just grab it because I don't see by the wire because I just don't see how else this is going to go. Let's grab here with the sponger. Okay, I'm just going to pull up on it because I just don't know how else to get it free. Let me wiggle it out. Up there it goes. It's up. And okay, that's how it comes up. That's the display connection to the motherboard right there. It's got some pins in it. This is, I think, the actual signal cable, which is my offending article. So let me actually, before I push this back in again, take a look and see if there's any dust. No, there's nothing blocking it. Again, sometimes just reseating these connections can make things come back to life. I'll be the judge of that. Let me get my light over here. What happened to my frickin' light? That would really help out. Get a little bit more light on this subject I'm going to do. And there it is. Okay, so that I'm going to try now and see if that makes any difference at all. Let's put everything back on. I'm going to have to get used to disassembling these things. So if anything, this is good practice for that if nothing else is accomplished. Let me actually go and grab my sponger again and push down on this other mount here to make sure I got this in right because I need it to fire up. Oh, it's not in. It's not. This was not in either. Thing about this, even if I screw this thing up, which is kind of already messed up, it's not a loss. It's a learning experience, and I didn't spend a lot of money for it, especially considering this thing is pretty much written off as junk at this point. So if I get something out of it, that's really great. But even if I don't accomplish anything, I've gained a lot in terms of knowledge. So I don't consider this a fail in any way. It's a necessary learning experience, which I'm going to have if I ever get into repairing these things more than I do. Okay, so now I've pushed this tab back in. Again, using my sponger. I, again, do not recommend using a screwdriver with this. I know a lot of people do that, and I'm fine with that. If you're old school, I get that. But I'm from the school that knows that if you press the wrong way with what a screwdriver is, etc., you can do permanent damage to something. Whereas the plastic here will give up before it actually is... Before the actual plastic component will give up. This will give up before anything in here gives up. And so this way I know I won't be damaging anything. I'll minimally damage this sponger, which I can replace cheaply. I won't damage the possibly irreplaceable part on the laptop itself. So again, I'm pressing down with my sponger to make sure this is in good shape. I'm going to push this back into its little cubby hold right here. It's got a little hole that actually stores this little part. And make sure it's nice and flat in there. Okay, so now I'm going to put it all back together. So I'll start with this top piece. Again, the last piece you take off is the first you put on, as logic dictates here. I hope I didn't break any tabs before, although it looks like that may have been broken off. Someone, I think, had this apart. The good news is this monitor might be usable. The bad news is because it took the wallop, as you saw, the whole casing for the screen is now shot. So I may not be able to get anything out of it after all, which is not good. This is how it goes in. The screw is held captive, a nice little touch. Again, this is designed for the user to be serviceable, to service this thing, aka user serviceable. Again, I just tightened that one screw next to it. I don't know how well the footage is coming out. I'm kind of just going as I go here because I want to get this done right. I can only lock one side because this thing took such a wallop. And now we're ready to give this thing a try. So what I'm going to do now is hook up my power cable and see if the display will kick over the power strip so I have more direct control. So in case something goes boom, I can catch it. There it goes again, same thing. Should come on and go off in a second. There it goes. Again, this thing didn't do that if you remember when I initially worked on it. Let's see if she'll kick over this time and we'll get some kind of display. I know the display screen is going to light up. The question is, will it do anything else? Hit the power button. Chimes. That's the equivalent of a post from Apple, from Macintosh, for those of you PC users out there. Excuse me. Ugh. Get this screwdriver out of the way. No sense in having it here. And I'll get you a better picture of the screen right now as I work on this. But let me actually free cam it here. So right now I'm waiting for it to do something. The hard drive just spooled up. Again, it's going to chime again, so it's doing a double boot. Something is still not right with this thing. Oh! That is a happy Mac. And this thing is actually happy. Yes, it's happy. You're happy. Oh no, it's booting again. This is insane. I don't believe this. It's actually freaking working. This thing is trashed and it actually freaking works. What the hell? I gotta tell you, I am flabbergasted. I actually got this thing started. All it took was reseating the darn display cables. The crazy thing is, though, this does not work on display outs. I don't know why it's doing that, but for whatever reason, it's working now. Okay, so as we continue to watch this thing to boot, I'm pretty stunned with the results I got today. I thought this thing was crap, but it looks like I saved it. I don't know how I did it, but I saved it, although it's badly destroyed. It's just trashed. You can see all the cracks on the side here. The plastic is missing on the side. It's been totally trashed. I don't know. How the hell did I pull this off? Well, I'm not sure, folks, but as soon as I know, you guys will be the second to know beyond me. Let me turn my light off. No sense in burning battery for no reason at all. Again, no backlit keyboard. So she's booting into, it looks like OS 10 if I remember correctly. That's Mac OS 10 because of the newer school laptop, Apple logo. Anyway, I'll let her start up. This is going to take ages, I think, and we'll see what's going on with it. So, it is running. As you can see, there isn't anything personal in here, so I'm not going to worry about showing this basic information. It's running Mac OS X 10.2. I forgot what the official nickname is of this particular version. It says it's the Darwin kernel. I remember that vaguely. Again, I'm not into Macs, so I don't know much about it. Again, running at 233 megahertz with a 67 megahertz bus. That's typical of these. This is the non-cached chip, so it's not a rocket chip. It's very slow. It has L2 cache, but I think that's on the motherboard itself. It's not done differently. It's, again, a PowerBook G3 version 2.2. That's interesting, because I thought the 2 version was the one with the skinnier screen. What I'm thinking is someone swapped the processor on this, and it didn't take to it, or something else happened. Because it is running, again, Mac OS, 10.2. This would have come with OS 8.1, I think, or 8.0. But then again, there it is, 10.2. Yeah, memory is 128 megs, 233 megahertz power, PC G3. So, yeah. And I still cannot get past the fact that this is actually working. And it runs pretty well, despite the screen being completely trashed. I mean, you have to look at this thing. The rear of the housing is gone on it. It's like missing half its housing. The plastic is broken pretty much everywhere. But now I know I can save this thing. So I think I'm going to do with that other unit. I think I'm going to give that a quick test here just for everyone's entertainment. I think I'm actually going to make that a separate video and see what's going on with that one. And I think that'll become the parts source to fix this computer. I am just so flabbergasted. I cannot believe I saved this thing just by reseating the cables, but it just goes to show you the old adage, reseat the cables, save your laptop, or restore your laptop. Seems to really fit in here. So yeah, bottom line, while the plastic is breaking every possible way on this thing, it does in fact work. There's just one last thing and there are a few other things I've done. I've also tried hooking this up to my VGA monitor, and again, the thing is, this laptop will not put out any kind of video signal from the VGA port. I don't know why it's like that. It will not do it. I have tried everything. It's just strange. I think the port is either broken, A or B. I'm thinking this is most likely. OS 10 doesn't support the VGA out because it is such a much newer OS from the 8 version that was in here. So anyway, I'm going to try one last thing before I shut this down and call this video a quits. I've got the optical drive here. Let's see if this goes in place, because remember, this unit does not have USB. These older variants only have ADB bus, and they have the SCSI bus on the back, but they do not feature USB, which is a big problem, because it means I have to burn disks to transfer files, or I have to network the computer. So anyway, I'm going to give this a shot again. I'm going to plug it right into my little port here, facing straight up, and just shove this in place. This is supposed to be hot swappable. Plugged it in, and I don't see any signs of life from it at all. I may try the other side. Maybe that will work. I only need to have this working. I don't need the battery at all. So it's not a big deal if this doesn't power on from one socket and not the other. Oh, it actually ejected. Whoa. Let's do that again. Ooh, I wonder if this thing would function. Do I dare try it? To try or not to try? That is the question. So, what do I have that I can risk here? So I have a homemade disc in here so I don't risk damaging anything, and it doesn't sound happy. Yeah, it's not supposed to do that. And yeah, it's not being recognized by the computer, so it tells me this drive is probably trashed, unfortunately. I think part of this is the reason is caused because of the fact that this system was dropped, and part of it is because OS 10 Well, obviously the first was obvious, but I think part of it is because OS 10 I don't think supports this, because these computers were considered too outdated to technically run it. Okay, yeah, I know you're not happy. So let me try one last thing. I have that other laptop that doesn't post, that was heavily water damaged. Let's see if that makes a difference. So I have the drive from the other computer right here. I'm going to go and shove it in here. At least I think it's that one. I think this is actually from a different unit. Plug it in. See what it sounds like this time. Didn't make any funny noises. I'm not sure this is actually going to read, but I can at least test to see if it's functional. Let me go pop my disc in here, pardon me. There it is. Get this in there. Let's see if this does anything. That's promising. Ooh, the screen is flickering again. This poor LCD is so badly screwed up here, it's flickering. Oh yeah, that sounds good. Ha 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 ha! There you go, it actually works. That is incredible. So now I have a functioning optical drive. This is beyond insane. Oh. Well, I guess what I'm going to do now is play around with this thing a bit more. But for right now, I'm going to call it quits on this project. I'm not done with this yet. I'm going to do a lot of work on this. This is going to get OS 9.2 probably installed. I'm going to change it to a solid-state drive. I'm going to do a lot of stuff to it. Right now, I just wanted to see what I can do with it, and I now know that I do have a functioning laptop out of this parts bin unit. As for the other unit, well, I'm going to do a separate video on testing that to see if it even posts. I really don't have high hopes for it, but if it works, it works. So that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If not, thumbs down. Please like, subscribe, and comment, as that will help me greatly. And have a great evening.